Good afternoon, Mets fans, and welcome to a Wednesday edition of Driving with Mr. Met. I am Mr. Met, and I'm back to talk about the trades that went down that we talked about on Monday, get a little bit of follow-up on that, and I also want to talk about news that broke on Monday afternoon about a certain former Met joining the front office, and the way that former Mets contract restructuring might impact the offseason as it continues. So there are sort of two topics that I want to touch on today, and they're both kind of related to the same underlying theme to, I guess, the point of all of this. And so first, let's talk about the trades and the signings from this past weekend. I posted on my blog earlier, the specifics of it. I actually couldn't remember all of the different minor leaguers whose names were involved in the trades when they went down, because I never heard of the guys. And I think that's part of the point to this. There's been so much outrage on Twitter about boy, you can't part with this guy or that guy or whatever. You could do so much better for this other guy. I'm sorry, but I just can't get that upset about moving on from prospects. You have just as much of a chance to pan out as they do to flame out. I mean, there's no way to really judge whether a prospect is going to turn into a legit piece. And I'd be willing to bet that more of them flame out than do pan out. So let's not get upset over the fact that Kevin Plawecki only brought back 2 middling prospects. I can't get that pissed about it. And I know everyone has an opinion, and this sort of leads into the second part of what I want to say. So, like, people on Twitter, and I mean, look, everyone's entitled to their own opinion, all right? And I'm not trying to say you shouldn't have an opinion, whatever, to each their own. But my problem with the way that everyone's reacting to what's going down and what's been going down is it's sort of equated to like a movie. So when you watch a movie, you get to the halfway point or maybe like 2/3 of the way through it. Do you turn the movie off at that point and then judge the movie based on what you've seen so far? Do you sort of say, man, this movie, The Usual Suspects, doesn't make any sense. All right, I'm going to stop it right here. After they went to California, I don't get it. It doesn't make sense to me. All right, you're halfway through the movie at that point. You don't know how it ends. You haven't given the story a chance to complete itself. And that's how I feel about the way that everybody's reacting and judging this Mets offseason, where I'm reading all this stuff like, oh, same old Mets. Mets are cheaping out again. Wilpons are the worst. Real original. Good stuff, guys. Look, the movie's not over yet, all right? And I'm not saying that we're going to be looking at a Casablanca by the time this offseason is over. All right, no one is saying that, because no one knows that. I don't know what's going to happen. No more than you know that what's already happened is all that's going to happen. So I'm just asking you this. Before everyone continues to freak out about the same old Mets, why don't we let the offseason end and let spring training begin and let the season get closer to starting after all the moves are done, before we start throwing Brody Van Wagenen under the bus as another shill for the Wilpons? It annoys the crap out of me that the Twitics, the Twitter critics, I think I just made up a word, but it annoys me that they're just judging a book before they finished reading it, judging the movie before they've finished watching it. The movie's not over. The book's not done. There's still more that's going to happen. And part of that might happen because David Wright restructured his contract, deferred some money, and now the Mets have perhaps some more additional funds to spend this offseason. Now, again, I don't pretend to be an accounting expert, all right, and I don't even play one on TV, so I'm not going to judge and guess what it means that the Mets have deferred this money and they're only paying Wright $6.25 million this year as opposed to whatever they should have been paying him. And I'm also not going to pretend to understand that Cespedes' insurance money is going to be paid back now, and they're going to save that money already. We don't know that. We don't know the specifics of how that actually breaks down. Like, we know that the money is covered, and some percentage of his contract is going to come back to the Mets, to the team, but we don't know how much. We don't know when. It's very hard for an insurance company to settle a claim before the car is fixed. Right? And so we don't know when Cespedes is going to come back. We don't know how much time he's going to miss. And I don't know how these things work out. I don't know if they pay out in increments. So this is another one of those things where I think everyone pretends to know more than they actually do. And the reality is that we don't know. And we don't know when that money is going to be available, what it's going to be used for, what it's already been committed to. We don't know. And so again, rather than assuming that the Wilpons are just going to pocket all this extra cash, because that's what they do, because they're the worst owners in all of sports, we don't know that. Just like we don't know that they're going to or not going to spend it. And we have no clue. And I'm not going to pretend that I do know, right? And I would really love it if the rest of Twitter would try to do the same and not just jump to the worst possible conclusion all the time. It's annoying. Frankly, it's why I don't use Facebook anymore, because it's just a pit of negativity and everyone's just so pissed about everything. And it's like, you gotta let something finish before you can get mad at it. I mean, I've watched a lot of crappy movies in my day, and there are only a handful that I've turned off halfway through, and I'm like, I can't watch this anymore. The Island of Dr. Moreau comes to mind, the remake with Marlon Brando and Johnny Depp. That's pretty bad, right? I mean, no question about it. That's a pretty shitty movie. Or not Johnny Depp, Val Kilmer, sorry. Thinking of Don Juan DeMarco, another pretty shitty movie. But anyway, doesn't matter. I'm just trying to say, let's give the benefit of the doubt to the fact that this has to be completed before we can judge it. And I'm also not on board with saying the Mets are going to go out and spend all this money they're saving on Bryce Harper. I'm not. It's not going to happen. I can't see that happening. But it doesn't mean they're not going to go out and bring in a left-handed starting pitcher, or bolster the bullpen, or bring in another left-handed reliever. These things can happen, and until the off season is over, let's wait and reserve judgment until then. That's what I'm saying. So, finally, to talk a little bit more about David Allen Wright joining the front office. I think this is a wonderful thing. He's. I don't think that David has an official role outside of like special assistant to Brodie Van Wagenen. He's not an assistant GM. He's not head of scouting. He's nothing like that. He's just a front office member who's going to come and go as he pleases, I imagine. He will be a legitimate ambassador for the team and for the brand. Something he's really been for the better part of the last 5 or 6 years, being the leader of this team. The fact that David Wright loves the Mets so much, he's the kind of guy you want to have around, even though he's not on the field anymore. He's the kind of guy who you want to have around. And I think it was Darren Meenan who posted something on Twitter that I thought was kind of funny and clever. Like, what if David Wright met with Bryce Harper and this whole like contract renegotiation and stuff? What if the Mets were this mystery team in on Bryce Harper and went and signed him, and it was David Wright who helped get that deal done? I mean, again, I'm not saying this is going to happen. I don't think Darren was saying that either, but it was like sort of like, could you imagine if sort of scenario? And it's kind of cool. But that's what David Wright's presence is going to mean, at least in my opinion, for the Mets, and that's the role he's going to fill as this brand ambassador and this person who's going to help sell being in Queens and being a member of this team to a prospective free agent. This is a guy who never left this team, who spent his entire career with the Mets, went through ups and downs, constantly talks genuinely about his love of the city and his love of the fan base and his love of the franchise and his love of the friggin' Wilpons, for God's sakes. So if you can find me a better brand ambassador than David Wright, I challenge you for it. Go for it. Let me see what you got. I'm taking David Wright every day of the week and twice on Sunday. So that'll wrap it up for today. I got this little rant off my chest. I'm glad I was able to. And if you disagree with me and you want to have an opinion that the Mets are going to suck this year because that's what they do, that's fine, whatever. But you know, it's you can have whatever opinion you want, but don't try to pass it off as it being backed by fact, because it's just not. So thanks for watching. I appreciate it. Follow me on Twitter. Yell at me on Twitter at Mr_Met. I will be back before the end of the week, I assume, to chat about anything else that's going down. But until then, thanks for watching, and let's go Mets.